The history of just how Frankenstein as a story came to fruition is also quite interesting. I mean, despite their financial plight, Mary and Percy, as a couple, knew many intellectuals, including Lord Byron and Tara Coleridge. And one summer, Lord Byron invited them to spend a vacation with him at his villa in Lake Geneva. And the couple spent their time riding and boating and socializing. And interesting enough, one rainy night they were confined to the dimension and unable to go outside. So everybody was sitting around a fire log on his villa, and they decided to entertain themselves by reading ghost stories. However, soon they got bored, so Lord Brian suggested that everybody write their own ghost story and compare to see who had the best, who had the scariest story. And shortly afterwards, Mary Shelley, after a horrifying dream, woke up and wrote down Frankenstein. She originally planned it to be a short story, but I mean, Percy, he saw the brilliance in her work and encouraged her to make it a full novel, full tale. And that's how Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, came to be. And it's really interesting to see how many of her life's themes managed to work themselves into the tale. I mean, there's the death of a mother, there's always that the idea of trying to escape death, a death that she couldn't escape in life. There's the idea of being isolated and ostracized, and her mother's feminism really came through in the passive feminine characters and the attempt to give birth without a woman. You know, later in summer of 1817, Mary finally finished editing Frankenstein and published it in 1818, and that's how we got the book.
In terms of literary history, Frankenstein is perhaps one of the first science fiction novels ever written. Mary Shelley was very well learned in the sciences, very in tune with what was going around her in the world. During the late 1790s, an Italian physician by the name of Luigi Galvani experimented with electrical impulses, and what he did was he caused a frog muscle to twitch by jolting it with an electrical spark, thus giving rise to the phenomenon we now call galvanization. And at the time, this idea was revolutionary to artists and scientists of her age, and I think Mary Shelley especially captured this in her work with Frankenstein, and how electricity somehow released mysterious life forces. Moreover, there was this obsession with body parts in medicine as technology began to revolutionize. Pasteur was on the verge of discovering cells, and Darwin was about to develop the idea of natural selection. So the whole idea of body parts and anatomy became a huge fascination for artists and scientists alike, and this as well was captured in Frankenstein. And lastly, there was the whole idea of eugenics. The early 1800s and the early 1900s, biological determinism was the prevalent thought, and that the heredity, not the environment, determined who you were as a person. So there were proponents of wanting to improve humanity by sterilizing humans and mentally retarded people, and in fact even aborting babies who did not have the necessary traits for society.
There are people who have interpreted Frankenstein as a feminist piece of literature, which is not unfounded, as there are very many feminist themes present in the novel. I mean, most fundamentally, it's a critique of the dangers of a male patriarchal scientific drive to usurp the female procreative power. It illustrates the horrors of modern reproductive technology. It tells a tale of what happens when a man tries to have and tries to raise a baby and a child without a woman. It goes awry. And I mean, Victor Frankenstein in this context is a failure as a parent, as he abandons the child and attempts to abort it. The idea is that the female could have prevented all this, and it's relevant because there are almost no females as mother figures in this novel, which goes to say a lot as to why society is decaying.
It's true that Frankenstein was written in the early 1800s, which was a time of scientific revolution, which was a time of feminist revolt. But I think the most important influence on the novel would be the philosophical revolution that was occurring throughout the late 1700s, early 1800s, and that was the idea of the school of Romanticism. the fundamental premise of Romanticism is that it's not enlightenment; it's the antithesis, you know. And in a lot of romantic works, there's a shift from reason into faith and emotion. There's more imagination. It's not just about cold, hard logic. There's a love for natural life, and which is sublime and breathtaking. You know, there's a hint of the supernatural. There's an emphasis on psychology and sadness and death. And it's very individualistic. I mean, Frankenstein embodies all of these things. You know, it's a typical Gothic piece of literature, which is very characteristic of the Romantic era. You know, it's a departure from rationalism and neoclassicism. It, at its heart, seeks to mix fear and romance into an odd dynamic melodrama, embodying the emotional extremes in its atmosphere and style of horror. And I mean, that's Frankenstein.
There are those who even claim that Frankenstein was written in response to the French Revolution. And I mean, the French Revolution was the epitome of Enlightenment philosophy, the epitome of reason and rationalism. And you look what happened, you know, heads started rolling, guillotines started falling, it all went awry, it all went terribly, terribly wrong. And I mean, that's who Frankenstein, that's who the monster are. You know, they're symbols of enlightenment, of reason, of logic, of science. And in the end, they both die, they both go wrong. And I think that's sending a very powerful message, you know? I think that's why it's called the modern Prometheus. Because Prometheus, he rebelled against tradition. He tried to create life, he tried to shape his own destiny. And Victor Frankenstein's the same way, you know? He tried to bring the forbidden fire, the forbidden fruit of life to humans, and as a result, he's punished. And I think Mary Shelley's sending a very, very powerful message by saying that maybe humans can never be perfected. Maybe science can never become God. Maybe we're all, in the end, insignificant in the face of nature, in the face of time. And I think that's why Frankenstein is so powerful and so well read. And I think that's why it still exists today. You know what I hate being asked the most?
Why Frankenstein?
Why Frankenstein?
Why Frankenstein?
Why should I bother reading Frankenstein? It should be obvious.
Why Frankenstein? The reason I think Frankenstein is important because Frankenstein is important to learn because that man shouldn't mess with God and his all-powerful being. It shows that the innovation and advancement of technology can corrupt the human race.
Is Frankenstein important?
I think Frankenstein is important to read because,
Well, I guess it's because it teaches you not to judge a book by its cover. I mean, there's more to what that monster than you think there could be. You just gotta get to know someone before you judge people. So I think that's the whole moral of the story, is to not judge a book by its cover. Well, in this case, a monster.
it challenges you to think about what man's role truly is in this world. How important are we? How do we relate to other people? And how do we relate to society in general? And that's what I got out of Frankenstein.